So, it's been 1 month now since the Murder Run series finale aired, a series that Glitch Productions and indie animator Liam Vickers has been working on for over 3 years. And with it comes a lot of questions. But there's one question in particular that I find most interesting, and that's to do with our series' main antagonist, Sin, aka the Absolute Solver. Now, Sin and the Absolute Solver's presence is littered throughout the entire series in small Easter eggs. Yet, we never really get an answer to what are they exactly. Who is Sin, and who or what is the Absolute Solver? Are they separate beings, or are they now one? Is Sin using the Absolute Solver, or is the Absolute Solver using Sin? Is either one even really alive? Most fans seem to believe that we never got to see the real Sin, and that the Absolute Solver is simply using her body as a host and adopted the name. Cartoon Universe did an excellent job explaining this idea, and I suggest checking it out first before watching this video. However, for this video, I decided to play Devil's Advocate, and went over every little clue I can find. Like I said earlier, this show is literally Easter eggs, so let's crack open some eggs and see if we can answer one of the show's biggest mysteries: who is Sin? Before we start, I think it's important to go over what the Absolute Solver actually is. I'm not going to be going over the entire show or its story, so I suggest checking out the show first to get a better understanding of what I'm about to talk about. I mean, you clicked on this video, so I'm assuming you have some knowledge of the show. Anyhow, spoilers ahead. Now, what is the Absolute Solver? Well, to put it simply, it's an auto-run program that rebuilds the drones if the damage done to them is far too great. It's a mutation that appears in drones that are not properly discarded, and in the show, we see 5 different users. Uzi, our main protagonist, her mother Nori, who she inherited the Absolute Solver from, Yeva, who also passed down the Absolute Solver to her daughter, Doll, and of course, the first wielder of the Absolute Solver in the show, Sin. It should also be noted that our 3 murder/disassembly drones, Envy and J, also have the Absolute Solver. However, this is a nerfed version of the Absolute Solver. The Absolute Solver allows the host to regenerate/rebuild themselves, so long as their core/heart's intact, which also becomes this weird crafting that can move independently of the main body if removed. As a side effect, it also causes drones to overheat rapidly, causing them to need to consume other drones' oil in order to prevent overheating. Absolute Solver affected drones must also avoid sunlight, as that will also cause them to overheat and dissolve their bodies. Now that right there is just the bare minimum abilities that the Absolute Solver gives. Our 5 main users with full solvers can also bend reality and move objects with robo-like telekinesis, except other solver users, teleport, duplicate objects, create flesh-like claws, tentacles, and wings, and create holograms so real that they can be touched. Yes, these holograms are tangible. We see it multiple times in the show. Now, with that out of the way, we can begin our theory starting with who was Sin. Sin started off as a normal worker drone who was at some point improperly discarded in a landfill with other discarded worker drones. It's here in episode 5 that we see the first interaction between Sin and the Absolute Solver, as we see this text appear on Sin's damaged visor, saying it will not discard her and ask her for access. Now, judging by the scared expression we see on the drone when it wakes up, I think it's pretty safe to say that this is Sin being brought back from the dead. After all, why would the Absolute Solver be scared of being granted access? Thus, it's safe to say that Sin and the Absolute Solver were separate in the beginning. However, is the Sin we see in the rest of the show really Sin? Or did the Absolute Solver take over at some point and adopted the name as a twisted way of keeping its promise of not discarding her? Going over the name thing, it's important to mention that the Absolute Solver/Sin has only ever referred to herself as Sin. Hell, even the yellow armbands on the murder drones have Sin's name on it. Why would this supposed program be so insistent on the name Sin? Now, this is mostly speculation, so let's go over some more evidence. I want to make a quick side tangent going over episode 4, where Uzi fully awakens her Solver and becomes Solver Uzi. Now, this version of Uzi, and the version we see being possessed by the Absolute Solver/Sin, acts completely different from one another. Solver Uzi in episode 4 acts more like a feral animal. The way she hunts down the other drones, the way she moves, the way she fights. It's almost like a predator stalking its prey. When she talks normally. Mostly.
It doesn't. I checked.
On the flip side, Solver Uzi in episode 7 acts more psychotic. It fights more like Sin does in episode 8, and doesn't hesitate playing with her opponent's emotions to get the upper hand. And when it talks, it uses the exact same robotic speech that we see in Sin.
Nori, you're dead.
You're frickin' grounded.
Angry.
Now, this tells us two things. One, any yellow infected solver user is indeed Sin, as they all act the same and even share memories.
Избавиться от вычислителя. Где он?
So that's what they were doing down here, huh? Crucifix-looking thing. Had my suspicions. Thought they kept cutting my feed.
And two, Sin is not the one awakening drone solver abilities, or causing them to go mad. Therefore, the Absolute Solver can't be some eldritch mind flayer that instantly controls its host, or at least not the one we see in Sin. Now, why did I go on this slight tangent? Well, it's to show that all the Absolute Solver users are independent of one another, and if this Solver Mad Uzi is indeed Uzi, then that means this Solver Mad Sin is indeed Sin. Speaking of being independent of one another, the next thing I want to go over is that not all Absolute Solver users are the same. More specifically, the abilities they possess are different. Doll is the only one seen being able to duplicate objects, and she and Sin are able to teleport. Sin is the only one shown to create holograms with these weird camera/projector things, and can also create these tentacles and claws/pincers. And she and Uzi are both able to create wings and shoot out null black holes. Uzi's only unique solver feature is her tail. It's also important to note that in episode 7, when Sin possesses Uzi, she only uses Sin's Absolute Solver's abilities, and not Uzi's weird mouth tail thing. Besides Null, Uzi's never seen creating claws or teleporting, and that got me thinking, why is that? If Sin here really is just the Absolute Solver using her body, shouldn't have all the abilities of the Absolute Solver? And if the Absolute Solver abilities are dependent on the host, then why does the Absolute Solver possessing Uzi's body can use all the abilities only seen used by Sin? Or uses Uzi's tail? It's the same case for Nori when she was being controlled by Sin, and she was able to also use the hologram projectors. And Nori passed down her Absolute Solver down to Uzi, meaning Nori and Uzi should have the same Absolute Solver. So why not have all these traits? Also, I just noticed while rewatching episode 7 for the script that Yeva conjures a blade to cut Nori free from Sin's control, and that Doll conjures a hatchet and knives in episode 3. An ability we never see Sin or Uzi use, once again cementing my claim that Absolute Solver abilities are unique to the user. Therefore, the abilities we see used by Sin are Sin's own Absolute Solver abilities, making her no more special than the other Absolute Solver users, and the fact that she's unable to use any other Absolute Solver abilities even when possessing other hosts' bodies shows that this is not the true Absolute Solver. On the topic of Absolute Solver abilities, there's one I want to go over in particular, Possession and Callback Ping. Now, this is going to sound a little far-fetched, but I don't believe that this is an Absolute Solver ability. Just hear me out for a second. Sin isn't actually the first character we see possessing another drone's body. It's actually Uzi in episode 2.
Uzi, give Brayden back his sentience.
Fight me! Her. I started it, and also I'm dumb.
Uzi is shown to be an expert drone hacker, capable of stealing other drones' sentience, and even recovering their memories that are locked away or changed. Therefore, I don't think Sin possessing the other drones is an Absolute Solver ability, but a natural drone ability that the Absolute Solver is able to amplify, allowing her to possess a drone wirelessly, or without these weird Bluetooth connection things. Hell, this even explains why Uzi is able to reverse callback ping on Sin in the final episode. She already has experience doing this, and she even took over Sin in any of these changed memories. Disclaimer, it's not exactly clear how the memories work in episode 5, but I just thought I'd bring it up anyway. And here's another huge detail many people may have glossed over. Absolute Solver abilities don't work on other Absolute Solver users. At least the robo telekinesis. So this has to be a natural drone ability and not the Solver's. So Sin being able to control other Solver users does not make her unique or some kind of Eldritch God. Hell, why is it even possible to reverse Uno card a supposed Eldritch God? So with that out of the way, we can get on to my next question. Why does Sin only give a nerf version of the Absolute Solver to her murder drone pets? Why did she kill Dawn when she could have made for a powerful puppet to control? Why just throw the files on all the other Absolute Solver infected drones in Cabin Fever Labs? Well, to put it simply, Sin doesn't want any competition. If the Absolute Solver is some all-powerful Eldritch hive mind that assimilates hosts into its beings, then it shouldn't have any problems wanting more Absolute Solver users to add to its arsenal. But this is not the Absolute Solver. This is Sin using the Absolute Solver to get what she wants. Giving a murder drone a nerf solver ensures they are controllable. Nori's picture in episode 7 confirms this, but those with a full solver, given enough time, emotional strength, or knowledge, will be much harder to submit and be able to break out of control. She also went as far as placing an administrator command on her drones so they couldn't betray her, a command that Uzi was able to overwrite. Now, why would an eldritch being need an administrator command, and why is this so easy to overwrite? When Sin says this,
The humans who saw what was happening at home thought they could understand it. All they did was spread it.
I think she's saying this more out of frustration now that she has some competition for control. And before you say this is just Sin acting, it should be noted, Sin is a terrible actor.
Hello, it's me, Tad. Can I get a location?
Human-made security this human can control.
This has to be Sin. She has her own unique abilities, cannot fully control Absolute Solver builders without nerfing the Solver and placing a command, and has a serious need to be the one true wielder of the fabric of the Absolute Solver. But then, that leads to the question, what is the Absolute Solver? Is it simply just some program that any drone can wield? No, I don't think so. Once again, going back to Sin's and the Absolute Solver's first canonical appearance, we see the Absolute Solver talking to Sin, meaning it is very much alive and has a will of its own. So what is it? Do we ever see it physically? Well, I think so. In episode 4, when Uzi's Solver begins to fully awaken, we see her suddenly super sensitive to all the machinery around her, as she shuts them off, all but one. I have no doubt in my mind that this is the Absolute Solver in the flesh. Some kind of eldritch monster that can only exist in machinery, or some kind of digital plane. This is not Sin, as Sin's Solver is yellow, not red. And it can't be Doll for two reasons. Reason number one, Doll cannot manifest flesh. We already went over this. And reason number two, she has no reason to want to antagonize Uzi like this and fully awaken her Solver. Hell, she even said in the last episode that she would help Uzi get rid of the Solver, aka Sin's control. Plus, this might be a different shade of red than Doll's and Yeva's Solver, but honestly it's hard to tell and it can just be the lighting. But anyhow, this has to be the Absolute Solver fully awakening Uzi's Solver abilities. Abilities that at first drive her mad. And you know something? The more I thought about it, the more this whole scene reminded me of another piece of media with eldritch inspiration. And that is Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a video game released exclusively on PlayStation in 2015. From the same guys that brought you the Soul series and Elden Ring. In that game you play as a hunter who is given special blood that gives him superhuman abilities. However, it comes with a side effect of possibly driving the user mad and eventually turning them into a beast. It also gives the user the ability to see the unseen, but most importantly, it gives the user access to the hunter's dream, an alternate plane of existence created by the Great One, known as the Moon Presence, and is watched over by the very first hunter, Gehrman. Now, why did I go on this side tangent, talking about, I don't know, one of the greatest PlayStation exclusives that for some reason is still not remastered or released on PC to this day? Besides that, well, it's because I strongly believe that the parallels between Bloodborne and Murder Drones are stronger than at first glance.
You plague-ridden rats!
Why are you talking like that?
I mean, just look at this opening cutscene in Bloodborne and this cutscene in episode 4 of Murder Drones. You cannot tell me that one didn't inspire the other. Both have their characters acquire special abilities via acquiring something, the Old Blood in Bloodborne, and the Absolute Solver program / virus in Murder Drones. Both have near immortal characters. Both characters can heal via consumption of bodily fluids, blood in Bloodborne, oil in Murder Drones. Both characters can go mad by their own power. And the most important parallel I found that completely changes the way you may look at this. Both have access to an alternate plane of existence. Now you're probably asking, what plane of existence am I talking about for Murder Drones? Well, it's the Absolute Solver program itself. Now, let me explain. I believe the reason why Sin is able to wirelessly connect and possess other Absolute Solver users is because they're all part of some unifying server. That server being a parallel for the Hunter's Dream. And if this server is the Hunter's Dream, then that would make the true Absolute Solver who created this server the Moon Present. And by extension, that would make Sin, who is the main administrator of the Absolute Solver, Gehrman, who maintains the Hunter's Dream.
Do your job and I leave you alone. Bad job.
Garmin acts as a guide for the hunters who enter the hunter's dream, and was given this task by the Moon Presence, to find hunters so they may fulfill the Moon's Presence mission. I imagine something similar happened between Sin and the Absolute Solver, and the Absolute Solver may have taken pity on Sin when she was dead, and gave her godlike powers to see what she does with her second chance at life. Before I wrap up this video, I have one last mystery I want to solve. What is this, and who is this? The second question we can answer easily. If this is Sin, and this is Sin, then by default, this is also Sin. But I don't think the crab hardcore is Sin, or just Sin. Now, what I'm about to say is complete speculation, so take what you hear with a grain of salt. Whenever an Absolute Solver influenced drone heart is removed from their body, we instantly see the fatal error sign on their visor. Yet, this doesn't happen with Sin. The entire time her heart is separated from her body, up to the point where it's nothing but a black hole core, her eyes are still lit up. So, what is this thing? Well, I believe this is the Absolute Solver program, the thing that gives drones their Absolute Solver abilities. More so, I believe this may be the main admin control. As for how Sin is able to survive with it, I believe it has to do with her being the main administrator of the Absolute Solver, being able to remote control all cores under her administration. When Uzi eats the program, she's forcibly trying to become the new administrator of the Absolute Solver. I don't think this core is Sin because we see all this text in Uzi's POV, and we see her ID on the left side, and it stays Uzi the entire time. We also see all these lines of code that says replace, global, entities, and escape data. Now, I don't know enough about coding to properly decipher this, so if someone in the comments understands what all this code might mean, please let me know in the comments. I'll leave this up for a few seconds so you can get a good look at it. Now, as for what I think it is, it's the Absolute Solver program going haywire now that its admin has been forcibly separated. We also see Sin's body melt into blood, or oil, not too sure, and Uzi falls down with it. In the next scene, we see Uzi being revived by that same blood or oil entering her body. I believe this is Sin entering Uzi, either by her own will, or the Absolute Solver programming trying to restore its original admin. Again, this is most speculation, but it does support the idea that Sin and the Absolute Solver are separate. So, in conclusion, I believe that Sin and the Absolute Solver are two separate beings, and that Sin is simply a child wielding a godlike power to play with her toys and get what she wants. Now, does this mean that the theory of what we see in Bloodborne and Drones is the Absolute Solver and not Sin is completely wrong? No. Does that mean that my theory is objectively correct and has no flaws or holes whatsoever? Definitely not. At the end of the day, this is just a fun fan theory, and it's based on my own speculation. But honestly, that's just what I love about this show. By not giving us a definitive answer, it allows us to interpret it in any way we like. And sometimes, having an answer to a fun mystery is less fun and less satisfying than the mystery itself. Maybe you like my idea. Maybe you like the idea that Sin is simply a victim of the Absolute Solver better. Either way, your opinion is completely valid. I decided to make this video because honestly, I had a real fun time hunting down clues and piecing this idea together. This was literally me every time I found a new clue that supported my theory. I also want to give people another fun perspective on this show, and this is also my way of saying thank you to Bliss Productions and Liam Vickers for creating this amazing, unforgettable show about robots murdering other robots. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you think anyone would be interested in this idea, please share the video as it will help out a lot. Also, while writing this video, I recently come across a brand new clue that can completely change everything. But I need to make sure you're all interested in seeing that. So, if this video gets 200 views, I will make a part 2. Also, you're a real one if you know what this theme is. Okay, that's all for now. Bye!